we all need to feel like we're valuable. Ask more questions, make less statements. People need ongoing support. They need
Mhm.
implementation plans. They need a strategy. So it's not just once again an area that you're just focused on one individual group. But if I only had 15 minutes of you, I'd spend it on what the honing those listening skills and empathy.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Redesign Your Life Today. I'm Daniel Kobryner, your host, and this podcast is about transformation. It's about understanding that changes are possible at any time in your life. And today I've got a very special guest with me. This is Yohan McDonald. Yohan is someone who speaks about mental health in the workplace with professional expertise and deeply personal experience. He's the founder of Great Minds, and he has trained more than 20,000 learners and over 7,000 managers on how to genuinely support mental health at work. But what makes Johan's message so powerful is that he's not only built on corporate theory or checkbox well-being initiatives. It's built on lived experience. After going through a mental health crisis that nearly cost him everything, Johan dedicated his life to helping organizations move beyond superficial awareness programs and toward practical skills that actually change behavior and protect people's careers and life. So, Johan, a warm welcome to the program. And this was a short introduction. I'd like you to tell us a little more about you. Who is Johan, and what makes you do what you do today?
Well, thank you, Daniel, so much, and thank you for inviting me on to this podcast. I'm really looking forward to this session. And the intro was great. I think one thing I'd add is that it's what I do actually. I equip people managers and HR professionals with the tools, knowledge, and systems to be able to support the well-being of their teams. Knowledge isn't enough. It's about having, real tangible tools which shape the change in the organization and themselves. Ultimately, my vision is to see a world where workplaces have evolved into nurturing communities that champion our mental health and well-being, that where everyone has the tools to thrive, and it elevates us rather than depletes us, and where psychological safety is as important as physical safety. And part of my story is that I've lived a lot of that, and I've come from a workplace where I wouldn't say it did that. Actually, I think it done the opposite. It had a negative impact on me, and but the part of the outcome wasn't solely down to the workplace. A lot of it was my own beliefs about myself and how I saw my life and how I viewed mental health and that lack of knowledge and tools to make a change was what kept me down ultimately. So having gone on a journey myself to get to where I am today, and running and doing the work I do, running the company I have, is really in touch with my mission, and that's what's important to me to make that change. And having lived experience of mental health problems is actually what fuels that as well. And it also is a gift, I think. It's a gift. It's given me the insight and the ability to empathize with those who do attend my training sessions and the people I work with. And I think it helps me connect with their mission as well. And they seem to like my story. So happy to be on here today to tell you more about it.
Well, thank you so much. I mean, this is very powerful. And so, Johan, a lot of companies invest in mental health initiatives, but still, there's a lot of burnout and stress levels. And why do you believe that uh, workplace failing sorry, why do you believe that the training are not adequate in most companies?
So simple messages. I mean, you just said it in your question. Alone isn't enough, and that's one
Hmm.
of the big realizations of what I do now. I mean, after years of delivering workshops, and I've delivered over 2,500 training sessions over a decade, and what I realize is that the training alone isn't enough. People need ongoing support. They need uh,
Hmm.
implementation plans. They need a strategy. They need to know, what does that kind of roadmap look like, and what does that outcome look like. You need a more holistic approach to a one and done training session. So, and that's the problem, I think. And I have to put my hand up. I've been part of that problem. I've delivered many training sessions and then gone on to the next one and then gone to the next one. And it's not that there's no value in that. There is value in it, but it really comes down to the organization itself and do they have a system? Do they have a strategy to embed it into what they already do? Embed it into their culture, embed it into their visions and values. And that's, I think, where you get that change, that we get that transformation.
Right. Okay. So if I understand correctly, first there's the training sessions, but afterward it's really the implementation and the integrations in the company culture.
Yeah, 100%. And so you need a plan, you need a strategy, and unfortunately, I think that's what's missing, and that's what I found having spoken to dozens and dozens of HR professionals and business owners. They, they have the right intent, so the intent is there, and they're taking action, and that's applaudable. But what they're also finding is they're not getting that return that they're looking for. They're not getting the outcomes that they'd hope, and that can actually have an opposite impact. They start to think it's the training that's the failure, or it's the initiatives that the failure, but it's not. It's just there's no kind of plan. There's no strategy to embed it, and that's what needs to happen.
Okay. I fully understand that. And Johan, so for instance, can you walk us through, for instance, the first training sessions, what does it look like? If and afterwards, the second question will be, when you talk about strategies, can you give us some examples of how you can help these companies implementing, this so that it really produces the results which they expect or they would like to have?
And so, in your question, so you said the
There are
first
two
training.
questions. First was about the training itself. Imagine you come up to a first you come to a company, right? And then okay, they book a session with you. Is How does it work? Is it customized to the company you are going to? If you can give our viewers some ideas about the frame.
So it can be either. It can be off the shelf. So I have lots of training I've designed, whether it's manager training, whether it's um, stress, it's not stress management or mental health awareness. So a lot of companies will say, "Look, this is what we want," and then I'll deliver that off the shelf.
Hmm.
There may be some tweaks to tailor it to their organization, their culture. Some companies will come to me and say, "Look, we have a very specific problem, and we need you to create something to address that." And that could
Hmm.
be that there was an issue, maybe there was some crisis that they need addressing, and they want to share a message to create awareness around the organization on that point. So it can be one of two. Sometimes they
Okay.
also maybe want an off-the-shelf accredited program, something like mental health first aid, which obviously is fixed, and then I can deliver that. So it's really about what their needs are and what problem they're trying to solve.
Hmm.
And then the second part to that, he was asking about how do you embed it, how do you create a
Yes.
strategy.
How you embed it in a company culture, because you said about critical part is the follow-up. How afterwards is it really implemented with all the people? How do you make sure that the people who need it are going to use it and benefit by that?
So it actually starts before the training. So part of
Uh-huh.
the consultancy package that I've created is called the bridge. It's a six-step process, and the first step of the bridge is I call it baseline assessment. So basically, it's a business audit, because in order to provide a solution, a training session that addresses a problem, you need to have great clarity as to what the problem is. So you
Hmm.
need to do an assessment of your organization, which can include things like wellbeing surveys, engagement surveys, anecdotal stories from managers of challenges they've had, as well as measuring HR metrics, so absence reports, sickness
Hmm.
absence, I suspect, specifically, staff turnover, and productivity levels, which is also, you can reflect that through engagement scores. But this just gives you a picture as to, okay, well, here's where the organization is. Then any solution should be to address the gaps that come from that. And
Yes.
providing you've identified those gaps, which gives you the roadmap, then you provide the solution, the training to fit that, and then the implementation that follows it is all about, because I specialize in training managers, so giving managers is with toolkits, things that they can dip in and out of, and help support them ongoing, but
Hmm.
also things like cheat sheets or escalation pathways, things they need to be that they can use in those conversations, as well as conversation frameworks. And it's just also, regular check-ins. So lots of tools, but just regular check-ins. And I also have created a manager capability assessment, so they can fill that in to see, what area they're short in, what area they might need some support in, and I can step in and coach them if that's what was needed. And then it's just making sure that the organization buys into that. And so it's not just once again an area that you just focus on one individual group, i.e., managers or staff. You need to be having it as position it as a universal organizational wide solution. So everyone's involved from the top down and bottom up, because everyone can play a part and everyone does have a really key place to role to play in that progression.
It's very, very impressive. And what I hear from you, Johan, is obviously the first stage of preparation is paramount. It's about really understanding the issues of the company. And I would say one of the skills, am I correct to say this, is active listening?
It's the most important skill. In fact, I always say sometimes in my training sessions, I said if I only had 15 minutes with you, I'd spend it on what the honing those listening skills and empathy, which is part of the listening skills, I believe. Because when you listen, and I know you know this as a coach, if you listen, you can understand their concerns, their perspective, and then you help guide them to the right outcome.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to share a little point, I mean, one thing I discovered being a mental fitness coach is that what people really need most, and all of us, is to be in a safe environment where we can feel heard, seen, felt without fear of being judged, of being criticized, or of being given unsolicited advice. And when we create this safe space, this is when really people start speaking up.
100%. I mean, you've just described psychological safety, and that's what enables people to thrive in the workplace, when they feel that they can speak up, like you said, when they can reach out for help, when they can say, actually, I'm struggling, don't know what I'm doing, or I need support. That when they're able to do that, that's when you can address the problem very early, as opposed to wait until that problem turns into a crisis, which unfortunately can happen and does happen. And as you spoke at the beginning about things like burnout, that happens over a longer period of time.
Mhm. Wow, thank you so much about this. And so, in this respect, because some people are more shy than others, they're not going to speak up. So, what's the importance of asking questions and asking the right questions? When you are a manager, you've got a team, and you feel something is not right. Can you tell us more about that?
So I think, firstly, asking questions is the right approach, because I have a rule of thumb which I share with a lot of my attendees. I say, ask more questions, make less statements, which simply means just probe gently, ask questions that help you understand what's going on for them, and
Mm,
then because good questions are open questions, and then you follow up on what they say. So if they share that they're struggling, thank you for sharing that. What are you struggling with, or how long have you been struggling with that, and how is it impacting you? What is it I can do to help? And you're building that trust and connection, but it also starts, long before you walk into a conversation around any mental health conversation about how they're feeling. It's about building a relationship ongoing, and
mhm.
that trust is something which takes time to build. But the more you take an interest in somebody, in their personal life and how they're feeling, the more that trust builds. And that's where I believe the barriers then start to come down, which can get in the way of having those conversations. And that's where you get, I think, people having that early intervention that I mentioned, and minimizing the impact of it.
Yeah, well, I have to say, I was in business before, and I so much relate to what you say, Johan, because when people feel, I said, listened, and when they see that there's a genuine interest in helping, it's not that you expect anything from that. You do it because really you can see the person is struggling. This is when the person is going to kind of speak out and really, as you said, trust is the most important, but people are going to judge you not by your words, but by your consistent actions.
100%. And that's a big part of it is being authentic, isn't it? So it's about being who you are. And I think the thing to remember is that we all have good BS readers. We know whether someone is asking because they genuinely care about how we feel,
Mhm.
or whether it's a tick box because they've been told they need to, check in on their team.
Exactly.
And I don't think you can fake it. Yeah, okay, you can maybe ask the right questions and appear to be that way, but over time you'll see someone's true colors. And I think it's just about connecting with that human touch, connecting with that human side of us, which means we have to kind of take off some of the hats that we wear. And because I was a manager, and I used to wear a manager hat, thinking that I had to be the one in charge, or I had to be the one in control, and I'm telling everyone of what to do, or how it should be done. But actually, what I didn't ever show was any kind of vulnerability. I never really showed that actually, no, I struggle too. And look, I don't have all the answers. And we're all on this journey together. So okay, I did have different responsibilities. I understand that, but ultimately, we still want arguably the same things in life. We still want to do well. We want to be known and recognized. We want to achieve things. And I think it's just really connecting with that and that human touch. I think certainly from the experience I've had of training so many managers, is that's what works. And lots of people will share in my training session, what they do currently, and then share the outcomes of that. And it's very clear that that is the path. That's the way to do it.
Yeah, so powerful. Really, our viewers who listen, this was so important. And it's when we feel empowered, even as managers by our managers, and when we thrive, this is how we will expand it to other people and make feel as well seen and valued.
100%. I think we all need to feel like we're valuable, like we're worthy. And the thing about it's just sometimes it's just someone's words that can help us or make us feel that. Someone just gives us a pat on the back. Good job, Johan. That was great work. Thanks for that project that you completed, or thanks for that little bit of extra effort you've put in. That can lift us up a lot more than anything else.
Absolutely, exactly. When you see the support of someone, and actually about this, when we talk about transformation, if very often, we hear this saying that the outside world is just a reflection, a mirror of who you are internally. And if you want changes around yourself, become the change yourself. How does this resonate with you, Johan?
Yeah, it actually makes me reflect on a model that I use in my workshops. We call it the frame of reference, which is ultimately recognizing that the way we see the world is a lens. It's a reflection of who we are. It's our
Mhm.
experiences, and that's actually one of the things which led me to make a change in my life because I realized that kind of there was like a I don't know a burning ember inside of me which wasn't being addressed and wasn't being lit. I wasn't living my sort of full purpose. And when I started to tap into who I was and connect with that, I realized that actually there were some gaps and I wasn't fulfilling that. And I just decided to pursue that. I kind of just decided to um, explore that side of me. And yeah, it took a little bit of self-reflection to be able to realize that there was more out there, and the lack of fulfillment that I was experiencing wasn't the end, and actually it was just the start, and it was the start of a journey of exploration really and discovery.
Well, see, again, I so much resonate because when what we learn as well as coaches that the way we are programmed from a very early age in our lives, and this is by our parents, environment, school, church, friends, and we develop habits which actually is not us. It's really, we learn some mechanism to protect ourselves. And in the first 7 years of our lives, we do it without, we get everything in without filter. And we think this is the reality. And this is what we project afterwards. So it's so powerful to understand that we can change that. And we can really, you mentioned the word authentic, which is so powerful as well. It's like, take your power back.
Mm,
So that's it. And so you help people empowering themselves as well.
yeah, absolutely, and that's and I like that word because people do have power, but sometimes people can feel like they don't have it or they've lost it or somehow that power is outside of them and they need to get it from somewhere else, but actually I think a lot of it is already in us, but we just need to know how to harvest it and how to tap into it and find what is it which kind of gets us out of bed in the morning. What motivates us, what is our mission.
Yes, it's living living our passions. Are you familiar with the ikigai, Johan?
No, I'm not there.
Yeah, okay. It's just I'm mentioning it because it's a Japanese word which means purpose of life. And basically it's a crossing of four elements, which is first, what are our passions? What do we love doing? What makes us wake up in the morning? The second, the second bit is what are we good at? What are our unique skills? And again, it's not about ego, but what would people say? Oh, Johan is great at that. Or the third part would be what does a word need? How can we help with what we do? And the fourth part is what can we be paid for? I mean, could be money, but could be as well to be rewarded. And when you cross all that, the crossing is the ikigai. And this purpose which we can find and which can vary over life, but we can change at any moment in your life.
And I think if you, but I mean, based on those four things, I think if you're connecting all those dots together and you're living that, then that to me that sounds like fulfillment. It sounds as though you've found why you're on this planet and why you're here and the value that you can bring. And I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges of people to get to that place. I think a lot of people feel that there's something missing, but they don't know how to get there.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I encourage everybody listening to this conversation to remember or try to find out what's your real purpose or what did you love doing as a child, which, okay, you were perhaps prevented from doing, but it's never too late. And surround you by Johan, for instance, and when you uh, when you realize that you can do everything in your life, it's just a matter of starting, taking the first steps. This is and when your life is going to change.
Yeah, and as you said, it's the first step, which I think is the hardest. But it's about taking it, being brave, being courageous, and but I guess the place you need to before you take that first step, you need to know kind of what direction,
Yes.
and I think that's probably one of the challenging bits. But I always say, and actually, my where I got to now, where I've created the Bridge consultancy. I mean, and it's in its early days, so it's only just really starting up. But I realized that actually that start was actually probably decades ago, and the only reason I found out that it's kind of decades ago because when I started to look at myself and really think about my own kind of personal life, my origins, my backgrounds, some of the things you were referring to earlier, the things that shape us. I
Hmm.
realized that a lot of that was almost like preparing me for where I am today. The lived experience of mental health issues, the work in some of the biggest companies in the world. I worked for Nestle, Continental Tires, and Lego, so some big
Oh, wow.
companies. I was a manager as well, team of 5 people for sort of 6, 7 years, and then I've gone on to train managers. And what I realized was actually that is the accumulation of me building my sort of skills, knowledge, and abilities, that which I now channel into my work.
Hmm.
But it kind of the bit that really got me moving in that direction was just the thing that I wanted to help people, and that was what I was missing in the kind of corporate world. And I thought that was wasted. I kind of thought, oh, I've wasted my time doing that, and now I'm going to try and do this people thing. But actually, I've realized that you can combine the two, and that's what energizes me. And I think people start with that. What energizes you, what gets you up in the morning, what's going to help you take that next step. And I think once people take that next step, then you can find, that it will just take you down a path where you realize this is what you want to do, or maybe not, or maybe just take a different direction. But it starts with, I think, find out what energizes you, what is going to put a smile on your face, what's going to get you up and have you taken action.
Exactly. Yeah. And again, this is so powerful. Thank you so much for all this wisdom, Johan. And this first step. I mean, it's really so interesting because I've got a similar story as yours. I mean, in a way, I mean, I found this passion now that this is really what I want to do. I want to help people as well. And when we have that, we combine. I mean, work feels like a pleasure because we bring something to the world. And everyone on this planet, everyone has unique abilities. And your viewers can really listen to that. It's even if they don't think so, and it's how can you bring them to the world? How can you help people? And when you do that, this is really so powerful. So, Johan, my last question will be if you could leave our audience with 3 tips in terms of how they could imagine people face mental challenges, what are the first steps which they can take, or people in companies?
Wow, it's a big question. So is the question about individuals or companies? 'Cause you mentioned
It's actually dual both,
both.
so you can have a. I know it's a broad one.
So actually, the first answer is it can apply to both, and it's a bit like what I said earlier. It's about asking yourself, almost like doing a business audit on yourself. Where are your gaps? What is how are you doing? How are you feeling? I think that's it's kind of starting from the basic, really. How are you feeling? How are you? Tony Robbins says it nicely. He says we have an emotional home, and this is where we live emotionally. This is where we spend most of our time. So is that place that we spend, is it in a place of fulfillment? Are we energized, happy? Are we living that full life? Or is it a place of lack and struggle? And if it is, then we need to start with that. We need to recognize that we're in that place. I think that's
Mhm.
the first step. The second step, I think, is looking, I call it being building a well-being toolkit. So you have to build and give yourself some tools which can help you navigate through life and manage your mental health. So actually, before we got onto this call, we done some breathing exercises together, and that's actually a really great stress management tool. So it helps,
Mhm.
regulate our stress levels and bring them down and be more manageable. But having things like breathing exercises, doing meditation, exercise, diet, getting good
Mhm.
sleep, but really starting to really focus on those and build a well-being toolkit. Because like a tradesperson that turns up and you tell them what the problem is in your house, they're looking at a toolkit and say, right, yeah, I've got this that can fix that problem. I think having a well-being toolkit can do the same. That
Mhm.
doesn't mean you don't have any problems, but it just means that you can address them far more pragmatically and effectively in the first instance before they escalate and become a real issue. And third, I think it's it's funny because I think part of your description of this podcast was about midlife, and I definitely fit into that category myself. I think it's also a reminder, and I think certainly hitting my 50th birthday, you realize that wow, time is ticking, and actually, the things that you worry about, the things that you focus on, it just doesn't matter. It really doesn't. And maybe it's taken, a life to get to this place where you realize that actually these things aren't that important and just to enjoy what you have, to really enjoy it. And I've got three children. Sometimes I can get so busy and focused, I'm just not present with them. Next minute they'll be grown up and left house and going off and doing their own thing. So it's just a reminder, I think, be present with the things that matter.
Thank you so much. And again, you see, I could use the same words as you do, I have to say, Johan. It's being present, being looking after ourselves as well, our mental health, physical health, because everything is linked. I mean, and when we are there, this is when we can be the most appeased version of ourselves. We can elevate our consciousness and help others doing the same. So thank you so much. I mean, it's been absolutely a beautiful conversation, and really, what I really appreciate as well about your work, it's beyond awareness because you bring practical tools to people and managers, and so that they can support people in a very meaningful way. So if our listeners and viewers want to learn more about the bridge and framework, what's the best way to contact you, Johan?
So they can contact me via my website, which is greatminds.training. They can
Mhm.
also, I'm very active on LinkedIn under my name, Yohan McDonald, YOHANMCDONALD, and send me a message. I'd love to have an open conversation. Really, one of my missions this year is to engage with more people, which kind of is in tune with some of the things I've said today. And I love having conversations with people. So I'd love to, get some have some conversations with your listeners.
Well, thank you so much. And I encourage all our viewers to contact Johan because, as you can see, Johan has so much experience and wisdom and kindness as well that he will help you with the transformation you need. So, thank you very much for everyone being with us. And if this conversation resonates with you, please share it with other people, share it with friends, with family, with anybody who can benefit. And I think anyone can benefit by that. Just listening and to see, oh, changes are possible. So thank you again for everyone for being there. Thanks again, Johan, and see you at the next episode. Bye bye.
Bye bye.